goody, here it comes.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show.
You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
Oh my God, don't stop now!
With your hosts, Brian, John, and Elaine.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I'm your host, Brian Coddington, joined by my fellow co-hosts and filmmakers, John and Elaine Woolscroft. So, we're on episode 14, and we got something a little bit different. We haven't done one of these in a while. We have a featured interview.
Yeah, special
featured interview. With old friend of mine, Johnny Daggers of Daggervision Films.
Jonathan Franklin Daggers.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I haven't talked to Johnny really in a while. You know, he's been busy with his documentary Blood on the Reel, which documents basically the struggle that independent horror filmmakers have to go through. And for me, it was kind of eye-opening because I've kind of been in this creative funk. I don't know about you guys, but when you're doing other things and you're not really focusing on movies, it's kind of like, I should be doing something. And watching this documentary kind of lit the fire again of me going why the hell am I not making a movie right now?
Yeah, man. It's hard, though. I mean, you have this thing called,
job.
A rent to pay is what I was going to say.
And a student,
but then you
student loans.
These gimmicks called bills.
So many student loans.
Yeah. But it was I really should go do something. So, I told Johnny, and you'll hear in the interview that I said that's the purpose of the documentary, is to get the audience to feel something and really empathize with the characters, and that for me
feel for us.
Exactly. So I was feeling it more or less.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's always good to have kind of other perspectives to kind of reinvigorate your own point of view.
Definitely. So we're not going to waste any more time, but here is Johnny Daggers of Daggervision Films, and we'll be back at the end with our typical closer.
Enjoy the interview.
All right, welcome everyone to our featured interview for today, I guess this week, and it is with an old friend of mine who kind of got me started in the whole podcasting thing, and it's with a filmmaker, model, musician, writer, etc., Johnny Daggers. Welcome to Cinema Psychos.
Thank you, Brian. It's a pleasure to be on.
Yeah, so this is kind of a Daggervision Films Horror Talk Radio reunion going on here, huh?
Yeah. How long's it been now? Almost, probably 3.5 years?
About 3.5 years, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds about.
I always say that, that's kind of where, the whole drive for podcasting kind of came from, was that particular show and kind of what we did with it.
Yeah, that was a fun show.
Yeah, we brought on a lot of really awesome guests, and I mean, I wouldn't have never met the Crypt Keeper or anything like that if it hadn't been for that show.
Yeah, I actually went back and revisited some of the older interviews, like John Cassier and Robert Morgan, and the horror realm extravaganza that we did. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, good times.
Definitely. So you're down in Baltimore now, correct?
Yes.
Wow, how is that?
It's fine. I'm a recluse since I hightailed it out of Pittsburgh, and I've really become just a hermit that focuses on my art, so I don't see the sights, I don't do anything, I don't like leaving my home. The world's a hellhole in my opinion anymore, and I just prefer to stay at home.
Right. No, I hear you there. Unfortunately, I do have to go out of my home every once in a while, get some air, that sort of thing.
Well, actually, I'm on the back porch right now talking to you, but I have a nice private backyard with an 8-foot privacy fence and nothing but trees around me, so I can't really see anybody, and this is kind of my isolation when I need to breathe.
That kind of is very fitting. Yeah. Fitting for you. So for those of you who haven't, who never listened to Daggervision Films Horror Talk Radio or anything like that, or followed Johnny Daggers, Johnny, do you want to go ahead and give a quick introduction of yourself and your filmmaking bona fide, so to speak?
Well, as Brian mentioned in the introduction, I'm a filmmaker. Was a model. I haven't done any modeling in a while because I decided to finally focus on filmmaking for a career, and I'm an author. I just signed with a book publishing deal with Burning Bulb Publishing, and
Very cool.
As he said, I'm a musician. A little bit of everything in the art world. It's awkward. It's weird for me to talk about myself.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking. I'm like, Johnny hates talking about himself. So
yeah, I find it a lot easier to talk about projects that I'm working on than to talk about myself. For like the book, I had to do an about the author section, and that was just really, it just sounds so contrived, you know. No matter how you try to word it, it's like, can't just somebody else write this for me?
Yeah, I hate doing bios.
Yeah.
Like whenever, if you go to the Cinema Psycho show page, you'll notice that there is no bios section yet. I mean, there is one, but it's like, it's kind of empty. Mainly because myself, not so much my co-host Elaine. She when I asked her for a bio, she gave me one automatically. But John too. We hate writing biographies about ourselves. It's like, just listen to the show or watch movies. There you go.
Right.
So you just had a movie come out now called Blood on the Reel, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Where that kind of came from?
Blood on the Reel is a 2-hour documentary about the trials and tribulations of independent filmmakers in the horror genre, more or less. And how that came about, I never aspired to be a documentary filmmaker. But for those of you listening that weren't familiar with our backstory, is I started my first film, Samhain Night Feast, in 2010, and it was just me. And when the film was finished, I met Brian on, I believe, Craigslist, and he came in, and I had edited the film, sent it to him, and then he put the final touches on it as far as adding the grittiness to it and tweaking it in a few spots. And then we built this beautiful friendship. And I started my next film, Caustic Zombies, and he started his film, Tablet of Tales, which he had asked me to star in. And so he and I were working on Tablet of Tales, and at that particular time, I had asked him if he would be interested in helping me with Caustic Zombies, but he was too involved with his own films, which is understandable. So he was a part of Daggervision with Sam Hain, but not like an official member, I guess I would say. I think that
it really. I'd say it wasn't until Tablet of Tales where I'd finished Tablet of Tales, and that's when I decided to be part of Daggervision. We were pretty much partners. Yeah. In the first couple of years.
Yeah, so we really, after Tablet of Tales, because I said to Brian, what do you want to do with this? And at that point in time, Daggervision Films was picking up a bit of recognition and attention, so he said, I'll release Tablet through Daggervision if that's cool with you. And I'm like, sweet, let's do this. So that's when the partnership got really strong. And not to digress too far back, but that's a little bit of the backstory about how Brian became part of Daggervision. And then we were working on a film that I wrote. It was called Moan on Car, which was a very dark animated horror story. And we just ran into a lot of problems with that. I mean, it started off really good. We got Doug Bradley signed on to do the narration for the film, and things were going great. But then, and we had a successful Kickstarter campaign, but then halfway through building the sets, we ran out of money. Didn't have the ways and means to transport the sets that we were already building in my apartment flat, so we needed a warehouse, but no way to transport what we had built to the warehouse, so the film really just fell apart. And at that point in time, I was so discouraged and so disheartened by everything that I was like, you know what, fuck this. Like, it's just too difficult to be an independent filmmaker. When you're trying to, even if you have a great concept, if you don't have the money to put into it and all these other problems, if you don't have anywhere to shoot it, and I'm like, fuck this. I am so done with even trying anymore. And I just really didn't know where my future was going to be as a filmmaker. I was in a bad way, and just decided that I was going to take a break, went on a hiatus from filmmaking, and just focused on my modeling career, which was really taking off at that time. And that's kind of where Brian and I just both decided that we were going to go our separate ways, because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I think even if I did decide that I wanted to focus on film at that time, I think we were just going different ways artistically. So I think that it was just good to keep our friendship and just amicably and go our own separate ways. And
I was like knee deep in House of Oddities at that time too. So
Yeah.
like we were just starting to film the interviews and everything for House of Oddities at that time, and it got to be so bigger than I anticipated that it didn't work. You know?
Yeah, it was best for us to go. So we went our separate ways with no hard feelings. And shortly thereafter, within a few months, I would say, I got into a really good relationship, which took me out of state into Maryland. And again, not to digress too far, but this does play very heavily into how Blood on the Reel came to be. So I found myself months later in Maryland with no crew now to speak of, so I'm going back to my very first film, Samhain Night Feast, where it was just me, except for this time it's just me, and I have no means of equipment, absolutely nothing. And not only that, but we were approaching the 5-year anniversary of Daggervision Films. And I had always, and Brian knows this, I had always said that if we had reached the 5-year mark, which is a damn long time for an independent production company, that I wanted to release something special. So here I am in a new state with no staff, I have no equipment, and I'm coming up on the 5-year anniversary, and I thought, fuck, what am I going to do? Like, coming up on the 5-year anniversary, I want to have something special. So I thought about just re-releasing Samhain Night Feast and re-releasing Caustic Zombies and adding these stories that have happened to me over the years. Like for Samhain, I was nearly arrested and fined for disturbing the peace and filming without permits. And Caustic Zombies, without going too much into it because it's in the documentary, I was nearly shot by a military officer. So I thought about, what if I just told these stories with the new releases? And then that didn't sit right with me because I didn't want to rehash the same old shit that had already been out there for a few years. So I thought, this would make for a really good documentary. What if I just reach out to a handful of filmmakers and ask them if they wanted to do a documentary? So I never anticipated it to be more than 5 or 6 people just telling their stories about their trials and tribulations as an independent filmmaker. And once word got out, over 90 filmmakers from around the world contacted me and wanted to be a part of the documentary. I mean, New Zealand, Australia, United Kingdom, Canada, you name it. People reach out to me like, we need to be a part of this. There's never been anything like this before. We've waited our lives to share our stories. We've had people like David Blythe, who is a New Zealand filmmaker who predates Peter Jackson. And
Wow.
David Blythe actually directed the first 3 episodes of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers back in the day. So David goes way back. So we got some old cats in this documentary as well as some newcomers, and everybody was just so anxious to tell their stories. So when it was all said and done, I'm sitting here with footage from over 90 filmmakers from around the world because I didn't have the money to travel to them, so I directed a lot of them through Skype. We set up Skype video calls, and I would have them use their cameras, and I would write up a bunch of questions and ask them over Skype, and they would film it on their end and then send it to me. And we ended up with a really cool, interesting documentary, which has never been done before. So that's kind of how Blood on the Reel came to be. It was all just because I wanted to share my stories, but didn't want to release the same old stuff that people had already seen. So it kind of worked out well as a documentary.
Very cool. I watched it recently,
Nice.
and it's amazing how so many people that are completely unconnected across. I mean, you were talking to people across the world, right? I mean,
Yeah.
these were coming all over the place.
Yeah.
How they all encountered the same bullshit again and again and again, where
Yeah.
it was the same stuff that you and I have had to deal with, like
Right.
money for movies or dealing with actors and trying to get people to go see your movie, that sort of thing. Like just the fact that they were dealing with all that stuff and everything is, I mean, it really kind of illustrates the I guess the rewards and struggles that independent horror filmmakers have to go through.
It really does. And the one thing that I liked about it was that it gave a global perspective on independent filmmaking instead of just a national perspective. So
Right.
It wasn't just a couple guys that I knew on the East Coast sharing their stories. This is literally a global perspective of the world of independent filmmaking. So it really worked out better than I ever intended it to be. So I was really happy with that.
Yeah, it was very. It was sobering to watch. I know I was driving to work this morning after I'd watched half of it and then I watched the other half when I got home, and I was just like, because I've been out of the filmmaking game since we released House of Oddities, and it's just a matter of, for me at least, like and you've probably been through this, where you just got that creative fucking block.
Yeah. And
it's just, you can't get over it, and you're just like, what do I want to do next? Like, that's kind of where I personally am at right now, is like, what do I want to do next, you know? Part of me is thinking, okay, well, I can do like an animated web series thing. That'd be cool. I love animation, you know that. And, you know, the other part of me is going, well, I want to do a horror anthology web series. I've talked to you about that, too. That would be pretty cool to do, too. And then the other part of me is going, well, you know what? You wrote half of the feature. Why not try to do that? Or why don't you just do a short? So it's like, watching your documentary kind of just lit that fire again. I'm just like, God damn it! Why am I not working on anything right now? Yeah. I mean, I'm doing the podcast and I love the podcast thing, but it's like I should. Something's missing. You know what I mean?
Well, you know, I'm really flattered by you saying that, Brian, because since Blood on the Reel's been released, I've had numerous filmmakers and aspiring filmmakers, you know, contact me and reach out and say, hey, you know, we watched Blood on the Reel. And those who were already filmmakers said the same as you. They were just happy to identify, and they found a lot of filmmakers that they weren't maybe aware of prior, and then aspiring filmmakers just found it to be, you know, so much inspiration to them that I've had numerous people say, I can't wait after watching that. It really drives me now to, you know, I've been putting it off for years because I'm afraid of rejection, or I'm afraid that, you know, and your documentary really, like you said, lit a fire. So it did what it was supposed to. This was a documentary more for the independent fans to better understand what we go through, because a lot of people will watch an independent film and they want to rip apart, you know, the effects because we don't have Hollywood effects, or they want to rip apart the acting because we don't have, you know, multi-million-dollar actors in our films. But I hope that this gives those people a better understanding of the heart and the sweat that we put into this, and the blood. And I think that it did. If I may just share a little story.
Sure, absolutely.
This past Halloween, Blood on the Reel screened at the Virginia Indie Film Festival. And it was awesome, you know, Blood on the Reel on Halloween at a film fest. And the MC of the evening walks up to me maybe an hour before Blood on the Reel goes on. He shakes my hand, introduces himself, and he said, Johnny, I have to be honest with you. Because the festival was run by the Film Club of Virginia, not necessarily film lovers, but film lovers, but not necessarily horror film lovers.
Right.
So he introduced himself to me, and he said, I have to be honest with you. I'll be presenting your movie this evening, and then I'll be the one doing the Q&A with you afterwards. But I have to admit, I am not a horror fan. And I'm like, well, this is going to be fantastic. You know, I mean, here my film is screening, and the MC of the night isn't even a horror fan. But this ended up being one of the best nights of my life, because after the film was done, I got a nice standing ovation, and the MC, when he introduced me to do the Q&A, said to everybody in the crowd, you know, basically said what he said to me, that he wasn't a horror fan, but after watching Blood on the Reel, he has a newfound respect for not only horror films, but for independent films, and he had a notebook of at least 5 or 6 filmmakers that he jotted down that caught his attention during Blood on the Reel, and he was going to go seek those filmmakers out and watch their movies. So to have somebody that is a self-professed non-horror lover come up to you after they've watched your documentary and say, you know what, you've really changed my mind and my perspective on the way that I view this whole thing, and now I want to go back and delve into it a little bit further just from the people that you've introduced me to. That was one of the greatest compliments that I could ever have as a filmmaker, because that proved that it did what it was supposed to do for people, and that was really exciting.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I know that I had a similar experience when I screened House of Oddities to a couple people in a couple groups. I had, believe it or not, Tim Gross. He came up to me after, because I'd sent him the movie, and I was like, hey, you know, if you could review it, that'd be great. And he said the same basic thing, is that he's not a fan of burlesque, he's not a fan of sideshow, but he appreciated what the people do.
Right.
And that's kind of the hallmark of a good documentary, is if you can empathize and relate. And you may not agree with everything they say, or you may not come from that particular background, but if you can, you know, relate to it and you can connect on a, you know, emotional level, then
Right.
you've done your job. You know what I mean?
Most certainly. That's actually, I watched a documentary this morning. I'm a big fan of the band The National. And the lead singer, Matt Berninger, he has a little brother, 9 years younger, who's an aspiring filmmaker. He made some indie films. And then a few years back, I think maybe 2013, he was in a bad way. He was in his late 20s, had to move back home with his parents. And his younger brother's kind of like a little chunky, heavy-set, kind of reminded me of like a Chris Farley type fuck-up, like
Right.
more or less. Like no matter what this poor guy tried, he always failed at it, and he always quit everything. If they talk about it in the documentary. He tried out for the baseball team, didn't like it, so he quit this, quit that, and the other. And the documentary was what I thought was supposed to be about the National. And because he goes on tour, his brother Matt, the lead singer for the National, invites him. He says, to get you out of your funk, why don't you come over to Europe with us and be assistant tour manager? And his younger brother Tom was like, great, I'd like to make a documentary on the band. The funny thing is his little brother doesn't even like the band. His little brother's like this metalhead and thinks that, the National are just this sappy, whiny, indie rock band. So it was kind of funny, but long story short is Tom gets out on the road with his older brother and they start filming this documentary. And the documentary has a lot to do with the National, but I was really surprised about just the human relationship with him and his brother. He, being 9 years younger, never felt that he had a good relationship with his brother. Thought that his life was going down the wrong path. Like, what am I doing wrong? Because my brother's a lead singer in this big band now that's touring Europe. And it was really an emotional, heartfelt film. Like, you almost started feeling bad for the younger brother because everything that he tried just got fucked up. And then they had a pre-screening of the National's documentary, and the projector wouldn't work. It kept shutting off like 15 times throughout the screening. And, but it was really funny because you connect on such a personal level with that character. And the documentary didn't even start out that way. But, he actually had no clue on what he was going to do with the documentary. He just filmed over 200 hours of footage. And the band kept saying, well, what are your plans for this documentary? And he's like, I don't know yet. I don't know. And then it turned into a more personal relationship between Tom and his older brother Matt. So it was just good. Like you said, if people can relate to a good heartfelt story, it makes a good documentary. And so this was a really enjoyable documentary for me, just as a fan of the band, and to see the relationship between two brothers trying to find their relationship with such an age gap and such different walks of life. It was really neat to see.
Definitely. Now I got to ask you, since you never made a documentary before, and all you've made has been narrative horror films. Mm-hmm. What challenges did you encounter kind of transitioning from telling something that, had a script and everything to telling something where you're basically piecing together the narrative after the fact? Because I know when I did my documentary, that was the biggest challenge for me.
You know what? For me, to be honest with you, it was really written out before the documentary began. Like, it wasn't like, let's just... Like, you've seen the documentary, so for anybody that watches the documentary, the one thing that they're surprised about, because it's filmmakers all over the world, and a lot of it was shot through Skype, or me directing through Skype while they shot it on their end, is that I did have a concrete, definitive list of questions that I would ask each and every single one of the filmmakers. So when you watch the documentary, there's this real good flow with it where somebody will say something and then the next cut of somebody else saying something completely segues or ties into what the previous person had said. So, with having a lot of the reoccurring sentences, or questions, I should say, I do apologize. I'm
That's
outside.
Okay.
And my cat just jumped out the door, so I got to put her back in real quick, and I'll be right back.
Okay.
Come on, get back in the house. Yeah, get back in the house. Okay, I do apologize about that. So, anyway, before we were interrupted there. So, I did have a concrete, definitive list of questions for each of the filmmakers. A lot of, I think, my problems were, as much as I hate technology, this documentary could have never been made without modern-day technology, without the use of Skype and all the tools that we have nowadays, since I couldn't afford to travel to all those countries. So, my biggest problem with everything was just making sure that, you know, the footage looked decent enough. I mean, a documentary, you can get away with some rough, choppy footage because it's a doc. But, you know, I kind of wanted it to have, and we did want to keep that overall really gritty grindhouse vibe of it because it didn't make sense to release a documentary on independent horror and have it be overly polished, which was the direction I started out with it. I started off with a really, like, sweet, slick DVD cover and was really, I thought, making the editing look way too polished for what we were trying to convey with the independent horror community, and I decided to scrap that and go with a friend of mine who did some really awesome, like, 80s style artwork instead of something super refined, and did a real grindhouse feel to the film itself. But I think the biggest problem was just getting files, and then you get files from filmmakers all over the, you know, because you have filmmakers all over the world recording in all different types of formats. I would say my biggest challenge was getting file formats in which I can work with. And, you know, that was a struggle because I had like 5 or 6 different types of file formats that I was trying to work with. But I mean, overall, I think that it went a lot more smoothly than it did trying to make a feature film, a narrative film, because I didn't have to. And the other thing I would say the biggest problem was sound, you know, because I have a tendency to talk very loud, and we have some filmmakers that talk very soft and low the whole entire time just to get a nice sound balance. I sent the sound out to a sound house in Canada, and they did a couple mixes of it, sent it back, I think after 3 mixes, where they got it, they thought the best they could. I still wasn't completely satisfied, so then I found another sound engineer in DC and took that audio that was already mixed like 3 times and sent it out to another sound house and tried to make it, you know, the best as possible, because, you know, just with different file formats and the way that people speak, you know, I just wanted the audio to be as decent as possible. So I think that was probably the biggest headache, more than the actual storytelling and piecing it together. So
yeah, that's honestly the hardest thing is, like, as you said, you can get away with, you know, not the best visuals in a documentary. I mean, they kind of, like, audiences understand that, you know, you may be getting it from various sources and that sort of thing, but the sound is, I'd say, probably more important in a documentary than the visuals.
Right.
Because, like, the minute people notice that there's issues with it, they'll just tune out. They'll pull out their cell phone. They'll be like, "Oh, fuck it," you know what? So yeah, I definitely that I was going through a lot of those same problems just with that. I mean, we had the benefit of, we did record everything with one camera, so, and we had a couple cameras going on when we shot House of Oddities, but sound was definitely the biggest headache, along with just, like, trying to find the narrative, because whereas I also had questions and everything like that, but because you're dealing with, you know, stuff that honestly I'm not quite familiar with. You know, I was familiar with indie horror, the same as you.
Yeah.
And then to get asked, oh yeah, you know, film this this annual show, and then go ahead and, you know, try to weave a story to it. So, like, that
it'd be much more difficult to do that.
It was, and I had to have my co-host John and Elaine. They actually came in, and because they've done documentaries before, and they kind of were more familiar with it, and they kind of coached me on, you know, what to look forward to. And honestly, like probably you did the same sort of thing. I let the footage speak to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, there was a lot of shit that, you know, just the way that it got edited and put together, I didn't plan on it, but when I reviewed the footage, things just popped out at me. Like, for instance, with Blood on the Reel, like, I just wanted a campy hostess, Bianca Elaine, to introduce the film and then have a little part in the intermission at the middle of the film and then just to close it out. And the funny thing is the way the film worked when I started editing it, I started looking at filmmaker James Balsamo's footage, and he almost set himself up to be like a co-host to the documentary.
I saw that. It was nice.
Yeah, it was really unintentional, but I thought, wow, just the way that he kind of set up his parts worked out perfect to be unofficial co-host of the documentary. So that was one of those happy surprises that I thought, wow, you know, I could really work with the way he did his segments, and I can kind of use this as he set pretty much every topic of the documentary up very nice. It was
really nice. I mean, it was very, very fluid. There weren't any times where I'm like, well, okay, where the hell do we go to now? It was well put together.
Thank you.
So I got to ask, you've got a new film you're working on that you mentioned.
Yes.
What's it called? Now, am I pronouncing it correct? Is it Noctambulist?
Noctambulist, yes.
Noctambulist, okay. So what's that movie about?
It's a 1920s black and white silent horror, which is, me being friends for so many years, that's always been my era, that's always attracted me to films. We've expressed my love for Hitchcock and Rod Serling and, Metropolis and Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and so forth. So when I went on that hiatus a few years ago before Blood on the Reel and wasn't sure whether or not I wanted to become a filmmaker or stay a filmmaker, I did some soul searching, and I really realized that, it's in my blood. I can't, when you're not certain if you're going to continue to do something, but it's all you can think about, and you lay awake at night till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, like Michael Rodriguez said in Blood on the Reel, then this is for you.
Yeah.
So once I decided that I was being ridiculous and that the film world was where I belong, and had no idea that I would shortly thereafter land a major distribution deal, I decided that, okay, I do really want to do films for the rest of my life, but I wasn't happy with the way that where I was going. Like, I knew that I was done with zombie films because zombies have been done to death, and my first film, Samhain Night Feast and Caustic Zombies, were obviously both zombie films, and I started back then, in 2010, 2011, getting pigeonholed as the next George Romero. Oh, you're the guy that makes zombie films. And quite frankly, I'm sick to death of zombies, and I'm sick to death, more or less, of vampires as well. And I thought, if I'm going to continue making films, I really want to go more into the German expressionist film and more into the noir films, the films that really inspired me as a filmmaker. And I think some of that's pretty obvious in Samhain Night Feast, just with it being black and white and the way a lot of it was shot. And then we even did that one bit for the special edition where you acted as Rod Serling in Night Gallery.
Yeah,
and, so that was always, my love. And I thought, I really want to just start taking my career more into the German expressionist film noir type genres, and started writing a script. I've always been fascinated by reality and the lines that can get blurred. For either those with mental illnesses or what have you, that just where does the line end between reality and fantasy and just this whole mindfuck world, and started writing a script called Noctambulist, and we're halfway through production right now. We should wrap it up like probably the first week of August, and it's been going well. This is the direction I want to take my films from here on out. So this is silent, which I like because I don't have to worry about any of the audio on this film.
Yeah.
But I am composing the entire soundtrack. So after the film's done, then I have to watch the movie through its entirety and compose the soundtrack along with it, which I'm looking forward to. And I have Jeannie Goodwitch, or Jeannie Taylor is her other name. She's the lead singer for a band in Canada called Curse in the Woods, and she's doing some of the vocals on the soundtrack, so that's great to work with her. And then after this, probably my next film, will be along the same lines. It'll probably have dialogue, but it'll still be probably a 1930s or 1940s, horror film of some type. So
very cool, very cool. And is this a feature?
Yeah. I now with being signed to SGL and having distribution for my films, there's just no distribution in doing shorts.
Right.
Unless if you put together an anthology of shorts that all tie together. So yeah, from here on out, I really don't foresee myself working too much on short films, mostly features. So.
Well, hey, I mean, if you've got the resources and you've got the distribution side, I mean, might as well do it if you can, right?
Yeah, I mean, we got really fortunate with Noctambulist. I got introduced to people who had a lot of 1920s antiquities that agreed to let me have them for the film, and, people with 1920s vehicles and, really great shooting locations to film on. So everything kind of just fell in line and worked out nicely for the movie.
Awesome. And so you're also working on a book, too. You mentioned that earlier, Neverlasting, correct?
Yeah, Neverlasting will be out it'll be released through Burning Ball Publishing in October, just in time for Halloween. And that book, actually, it's funny because it's was spawned from the script that I wrote that you and I were working on for Mo and Armkara. It was very the dark animated stop animation.
It was a puppet movie.
Yeah, my puppet movie. Yeah, my puppet movie. And I thought, well, since it never got made, it's a shame because I really liked the story, but I really changed it a lot. I've changed the story so much from the film script. It still has the same feel and element, but it got a lot darker, and it worked out so much better as a story, I think. So I was very happy with the end result.
Very cool. Very cool.
And I had a great artist by the name of William C. Cope do the illustrations for it. So he really knocked out the illustrations. He did a good job with that.
Awesome. So I got to ask the obligatory question that usually gets associated with either you or me. I mean, I had this asked me when I was on Johnny Axe's show recently. And, of course, he has to ask me this. But what's your opinion of remakes nowadays?
They're the same as they were back when we formed our friendship in 2010. I really despise them. I just not a fan. I just feel like there's so much out there that's just been done to death and rehashed, and it's there are always exceptions to the rule. There are those great remakes that kind of move things along maybe a little faster than the original did. I mean, The Fly is one of those, and I'm the biggest Vincent Price fan around. Or, people, can like him on an equal level as I, but, I don't think I'm more fond of anybody in my heart than Vincent Price. So for me to say that, but I tell you, I mean, they did a really great job with Jeff Goldblum and his version of The Fly, and, there are a few exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, just come up with something that's fresh. And I know that when we had the podcast, we used to bitch about, and my main thing was when Rob Zombie was going to remake The Blob, and was quoted as saying he wasn't going to make it a red blobby thing because that wasn't scary. And I'm like, well, then why make The Blob? Like, why? If you're, you know what I mean? If you're going to completely change it, why not just call it something different and make your own film that was influenced by that? That's
honestly kind of my feeling with the new Ghostbusters movie.
Mine too. I'm so pissed.
Oh God. I mean, I see the criticism, and like my biggest thing with it is that if you criticize it, if you say that you just don't like it because, for me, it's a matter of the effects are shit. You compare that to the original Ivan Reitman movie, and he used stop motion animation, and he used physical effects. Yeah, people were making stuff for him, and those are scary. Like the scene with the librarian, fucking scary as shit. Okay, and then you look at this thing and you're like, wait a minute, it's Scooby-Doo like shit. I mean, that's my biggest problem is that it looks like it's out of the Scooby-Doo movie.
I agree.
And if you criticize it, if you criticize the fact that the jokes simply aren't funny, like, it's just not funny. I've watched every single trailer that has come out about it, mainly because I know that I'm going to have to, for this podcast, review it, because I'm not going to be like James Rolfe, the angry video game nerd, who said that he's not going to review the movie, he won't do it. I want to do it mainly because I want to see how bad it truly is. It's the same logic that I used when I went and saw the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street, which that Nightmare on Elm Street is one of my absolute favorite horror movies.
Right.
And I went and saw it because I wanted to see how bad it was going to be, and I was disappointed. So, but, like, I've seen that anytime you criticize it, you suddenly are considered a misogynist, sexist, you hate women, and it's like, no, I just don't want my childhood fucked with. What was that?
Yeah. I love Melissa McCarthy. I think she's goddamn hilarious.
Me too.
But she should not be in Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters just should. I mean, and everybody, says, "Oh, well, it was really their intent." It was Harold Ramis's intent.
No, it wasn't.
And it's just like, this isn't Ghostbusters. It's going to alienate all the people like ourselves that grew up with Ghostbusters. It's I won't see it because I now, with me not having a podcast, actually I take that back. My girl will probably make me see it because she wants to, so I'll probably be subjected to watching it. But I did have to force myself to see the new Evil Dead because we were doing Daggervision back then, the Daggervision podcast.
I thought that wasn't so bad.
and yeah, I totally dislike that. But yeah, when it comes to remakes, it's just, originality back, and I think I've noticed a lot of people recently are really reverting back to independent films, which is a fantastic thing, because that's where the authenticity is, that's where the heart is. You don't have big budget studios, releasing something just to get the money back from it, and caring less about the creativity and only the monetary gains. So
the only thing my concern is with, and I read an article a couple months ago about this, is that they're now in the marketplace, they're saying that there's an influx of independent films and not enough distributors to get them out.
Right.
That's the biggest problem right now, is that with the technology, with having iPhones that can shoot 4K, for God's sake,
right.
And people having the editing software at the fingertips, and being able to go ahead and put together a movie that years ago you couldn't do.
Exactly. Shit, I mean, even when Daggervision started in 2010, we weren't there yet, with technology.
Right.
So,
but I mean, I think the fear is that that there's too much independent film, and there's not enough, finding the best ones and then getting distribution for them. That's, I think, the big problem nowadays, is that there's too much independent film and not enough people to see it, or not enough ways to go and get it. I mean, I still see problems with distribution side of it. I mean, you've got some venues like Amazon's Video Direct now, which basically opens the gateway up for anyone who shot something professional to get it out onto Amazon Prime and get people to watch it. But at the same time, it's still hard, I think, for the independent filmmaker who maybe he's gone through a couple shorts and maybe he's done one or two features here. It's still hard for him or her to really get up to a point where you're at, honestly, where you've got distribution and everything. I think it's still difficult for that.
It really is. I mean, I count my blessings every day. I mean, if you would have asked me 6 years ago if I would have had a distribution deal where my films are in FYE and Walmart and Best Buy and all over, I'd say, you're crazy, I got really fortunate, and it doesn't happen for everybody. That's the one thing that I wake up every day and I feel blessed. I say, look, there's filmmakers that have went to school and they've tried for 20 years to make a living at this and they haven't been able to yet. And, I mean, honestly, I got signed with SGL Entertainment 4.5 years after I started making films. So that happened relatively quickly for me, I mean, when you look at the grand scheme of things, 4.5 years from the time you pick up a camera and just start to...
It's not a lot of time.
Yeah, it happened really... So I'm fortunate. I will never say that I'm not. I feel blessed every day. And the other thing, too, though, is even though I am fortunate enough to have a distribution deal and have my films in all the major retailers, it's still a goddamn difficult thing for, obviously the first question people ask you is, am I going to be able to go to the theaters and watch your movie? It's like, no, you can't go, to your local mall and, go to the cinema at your mall and see Blood on the Reel, but, you can go into your stores and online and order them at any of the retailers. Yep. But I'd like to see the independent films get to the point where it wasn't just, indie theaters showing what we do. I'd like to see it on a larger scale. But, then again, too, I was thinking about today, I'm like, now I've become a filmmaker that makes films that are available for the masses, but don't appeal to the masses.
Right.
So
you've never been that type of person who appeals to the masses, so it's like you're not going to start now.
Yeah, that's the kind of cool thing about it. It's like now I'm available everywhere, but I'm not making films that, your average person on the street are going to want to go and pick up. So it's I kind of like that, though. It's I think that a lot of people that watch Blood on the Reel, if you're not a fan of independent filmmakers, you're going to look at some of those filmmakers that have clips in that documentary and you're going to be like, this is complete shit. You know what I mean? Like, in all honesty, just being honest, I mean, shit, people look at John Waters' films and they think they're ridiculous. Or, they look at Ed Wood, who I love. I love Ed Wood, and I've had people say, Plan 9's like one of the worst movies that I've ever seen. I'm like, really? I enjoy it. So, I mean, the type of films that we make aren't going to cater to, I guess that's why you won't see them at your local cinema theaters,
Right. But I think the big thing, though, and I mean, I think you capture this in Blood on the Reel, is that whereas a lot of the movies in that, maybe don't follow every single rule in the rule book, which honestly, those rules are more guidelines than anything.
Right.
You cannot say that they aren't original.
Exactly.
You cannot say that they've been done before. You know, every single movie that I saw in there, you know, it was a homage. It was taking pieces from movies that they were influenced by, but creating a brand new thing. And they weren't trying to recreate the wheel either. They knew what worked and they knew what didn't work. And every movie that I saw in that documentary was an original film. How many Hollywood movies can you say the same thing about? Not many, you know? So I think that's kind of the thing is, yeah, maybe amongst the not great camera work or the sound issues here or there or the effects aren't that great or the acting's not that great, it's still original. There's still original stories. People still put, you know, as you say, blood, sweat, and tears into them to create them. So, I mean, that's the one takeaway from it is that, you know what? The originality that you want in horror films, you're not going to find it at the next Conjuring movie that comes out or the next Paranormal Activity movie that comes out or, you know, anything like that. It's going to be with guys like you, guys like me, guys like everyone in that documentary who create original ideas and put them together whether they are commercially viable or not.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that all of the filmmakers that are featured, I mean, there are some people that I discovered for the first time, you know, in Blood on the Reel, when I was getting requests from people around the world that I had never heard of. And I said, well, you know, send me some of your trailers or a link that I can watch them, and then I'll get back to you. And, I mean, there's so much good shit out there. I mean, again, like you said, aside from maybe not the best camera work or some sound issues, if you're looking at a well-put story, you know, there's just one guy, you might be familiar with him, Jim Roberts, who I think he's from Ohio. I've known him for years now. But I really didn't get to see a lot of his work until he submitted some things for Blood on the Reel. Mm-hmm. And he just, I think it was a year ago, or probably 2 years ago now, he released a film called Happy Hour Holocaust. And it's a little anthology film. And I was just really impressed by it. I just thought, you know, and the one thing that I admire about a lot of the people in our documentary is that I've never shown nudity in my films, and I've never showed a lot of gore. I'm more the old school type filmmaker, where I play on mental terrors. But I have a respect for a lot of those people that can do really great, gory, practical effects and, you know, make these wonderful stories. So I have an appreciation for those people because they do something that it's just completely not my style or my thing. But I grew to love so many of the people that submitted footage and have quite a fondness for the style of films that they make, even though it's not my thing to make myself. Right. So, yeah, I think that there's a really great lineup there for people to check out.
Awesome. So where can our listeners get a copy of Blood on the Reel or get more information about you and what you're working on?
Well, if you want to get more information about me, you can visit my website, johnnydaggers.com. As far as Blood on the Reel, it's available at all major movie retailers. It's on Amazon Prime. It's Walmart, Best Buy, FYE, Target, Kmart, so forth. So it's pretty easy to find. Just whichever. It seems like nowadays everybody loves to purchase through Amazon. I know, you know, that's my girl's thing to do. Is everything. Every day we have 5 boxes of Amazon coming to the house. But yeah, so for the first time in my life, you won't have a problem finding something that I've released. And then from here on out, Noctambulist will also be released through SGO Entertainment. It'll also be through all the same major retailers. So
awesome. Well, thanks again, Johnny, for coming on to the show. We'll have to have you back once Noctambulist comes out and talk more about indie horror.
Yeah, always a pleasure, Brian. It's been too long. I feel like, you know, just with me moving away, so we're not able to get together, you know, and, you know, it's been too long, but it's always a pleasure to be on your show, and I look forward to coming back in the future.
All right, thank you. Well, thanks, Johnny, for stopping by. That was a fantastic interview. What did you guys think? Definitely,
and I think it had a really great perspective. Just, you know, like we talked about before, to kind of like keep going with your own work. Like, I know sometimes it can be really hard, and as he outlined, you know, there's like a lot of challenges, but you know, it's who we are. You know, Absolutely. Like when you're a filmmaker, I don't know, I can't explain it any other way. Just it's what you want to do, you know, all the time, and you've got to sometimes work around your own life limitations, like no matter what those are.
Definitely.
We need to do more of these. So people, please reach out to us more often.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is
Get your interview on.
Well, I'm going to be talking to the guest that we were going to have on a couple episodes back.
Oh, great.
Who he reached out to me, and we're gonna try to see about getting him on to do his featured interview too.
Awesome.
But I love doing these featured interviews. It's really fun. It's it breaks up just us, do movie reviews, which I love doing.
Yeah, I mean, not that we won't take a shit on every major picture coming out this summer.
That's true.
Ghostbusters.
Oh yeah, it's coming. It's coming, folks.
It's coming for you fast.
So be sure to like us on Facebook and Twitter at Psycho Show. If you have a favorite movie you would like us to review or a question you want to throw to us, you can contact us at cinemapsychoshow@gmail.com. And be sure to subscribe to our next show, available every Friday. We'll see you then.
Peace.